Do you hear the terms data lake, data warehouse, data lake house, and wonder what do all these things mean? What does a modern data architecture look like today? Hi, I'm Julia, and I teach data analytics at Altus Consulting. Today, we're looking at the modern data architecture on the whiteboard. Let's go.
So let's start with some data sources. And that could be things like Excel files or CSV files, hopefully some databases, or maybe even Internet of Things, our IoT devices. Now that data typically gets processed, and traditionally we've been talking about a data warehouse here that is structured in a Kimball design as a dimensional model. So here's our star schema. Of course, that is to serve our analytics purposes. So it's the data analytics that will access the data warehouse. Now, within the data analytics, there's actually two parts that are quite important. And one is the semantic layer, and the second part is reports and dashboards. So whether you're working with Power BI or Tableau or other tools, there's typically a semantic layer, a semantic model. And this model looks very much, again, like that Kimball star schema design is our dimensional model. Now, the difference between the semantic model and the physical model, which is sitting in our data warehouse, is the semantic model may have some things on top of the data warehouse model, such as calculations created in maybe DAX if you're using Power BI. There's also a definition of the connections between the tables, so which surrogate keys are connecting the tables. There may be a role-playing dimensions defined, so we may be creating copies of those tables if we need to do so. So those kind of things. And then, of course, we have our reports and dashboards. And maybe other things. So that is your analytics layer. Now, this all happens in things like Power BI, and of course, the people who are working here are typically data analyst roles, business analysts, etc. Now, what's interesting here is in the modern data architecture, we don't just have the data warehouse, we also have a data lake. So let's just see where that fits in. We're going to move the data sources over to the left a little bit. So we're going to insert the data lake right in between. Now, so the data warehouse is still there. We have a data lake. Now, the data lake doesn't have a data in the dimensional model. It actually has raw data. It also can have unstructured or semi-structured data. Unstructured. Right. And this is also where we have a concept of the different layers, such as bronze or silver. So your raw data may be the bronze layer, and somewhat structured and organized and described data or cleansed data, maybe a silver layer. Now, in the data warehouse, you want your gold layer because that's ready for the business analysts. Okay, there's a processing step between the two. Some architectures would call this data lake place, they call it Microsoft. They call it a lake house. Yeah, so think of a data warehouse and this part being a lake house. So let's rename it into lake house. And then this whole thing together, the lake house together with the data warehouse, I can think of it as our data lake. Now, there are still two different parts to it in terms of the structure. So the lakehouse having the raw data and the data warehouse specifically being optimized for business analytics in terms of the structure and the definitions of the metrics and tables, and having that dimensional modeling design. However, they can physically sit in separate systems or in the same system, such as with Microsoft Fabric, you'll find that it's all sitting physically in one lake. Now, who's using Data Lake directly? These are data scientists. They are very well placed to connect directly to the raw, unstructured, and semi-structured data using Python scripts and advanced tools like that. So let's put data scientists here. Here we go. And who does all the hard work of integrating the data and creating those pipelines? Yeah, one's from data source to data lake, and of course within the data lake, we have so-called ELT processes: extract, load, transform. They used to be ETL. Now these days they're more ELT, and these are done by data engineers. There you go. Hopefully, this whole thing is underpinned by some solid data governance processes. And this is your modern data platform in a nutshell.
So the data lakes are great for holding unstructured data and for data science projects. The data warehouse, on the other side, is what we need for data analytics, including the semantic models. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my courses.